The first lockdown in England put paid to my spring fishing for plaice at Eastbourne in 2020, so I was really keen to come back and have a bash when travel restrictions were eased in April 2021. The locals named this part of the beach as Cambridge Road, but I tend to refer to it as the Langham Hotel stretch. The hotel is at the end of Royal Parade and at the junction with Cambridge Road. It's very close to the Redoubt Fortress at Splash Point, and this was the sort of start I was hoping for. A bite and a fish, first cast. And, much to my delight, it is a plaice and a fairly decent size. It has taken ragworm on the top snood of my clip down rig. Although it's sizable, I'm putting this one back as I'm hopeful of getting more since the tide is only about a third of the way up. I might not look it, but I'm happy now. That's a great start. A pan round the area. Splash Point is a few groins up. Langham Hotel is behind me at this end of a Royal Parade terrace. Eastbourne Pier is nearby and can be seen in all its glory. I've pretty much got my standard setup and gear. 2 continental rods with fixed spool reels. I'll keep them fairly low and almost parallel to the beach to help me spot bites from the flatfish. Rigs are straightforward with plain, free hook, clip down versions. They've both got short snoods, but the one on the left is attached to an Americano lead, which is slightly smaller than the other lead which I'm using, which is a breakaway continental. This is a spring tide and it's coming in quite quickly. So I'm making my first move up the beach. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll probably notice that I tend to follow the same sort of routine, with the rods being the last to be moved, just in case I should get a bite, or an obliging fish just wants to hook itself as I'm transferring my gear. It's the same principle as pouring out a coffee or grabbing a sandwich. You're hoping that the fish might think you're otherwise distracted. For this move, I'm not going right to the top of the beach, as I do like to be fairly near to where the water's edge is. Once the tide comes up to where I'm placing my bucket seat, I'll then move to the top of the beach. I'll pull in one rod, rebait it and clip it up ready for recasting before I go and grab the other rod and the tripod. As I go to rebait, I'll cover the locational details. A number of my other Eastbourne videos gives the regional setting, so here I'll just start with Eastbourne itself. This map shows some local marks, then zooms in on the area between the pier and Sovereign Harbour. I mainly fish spots between the Redoubt Fortress and Langley Point. The other side of Sovereign Harbour are Pevensey Bay marks. Anywhere between the pier and Splash Point can produce, but I like to be a few bays closer to the fortress itself. I've identified the nearby roads where parking is available and also pointed out the groin numbers. For this video, I'm fishing between groin 50 and 51. One of my rigs is size 4 Aberdeens and the other one's got size 2. I'm alternating between using ragworm and lugworm. I dig my own lugworm at Southend, but I've bought ragworm and that's in the paper. So that one's now ready to be cast out once I've brought my other rod up. Well, there's no obliging fish on, or at least I can't feel one, so I'll open the bail arm and let line out as I move my rod up. That means I can leave my baits out at a fair distance for just that little bit longer. The one that's still out there is the one I caught the fish on. It's the one with the size 2 hooks and slightly larger baits. The one I'm about to cast out has got the size 4 hooks, a Takana Americano lead, and that allows me to search the ground just that little bit more. I've only had one bite so far, but that was fairly early on in the tide. I'm expecting most of my action towards the top of the tide. I'm also hoping to fish a tide a fair way down. If I was fishing closer to Landguard Point, I'd want to be fishing over low water as well. The tide's come up to where I was fishing, and I've not had any further bites. I'm now in the process of moving my gear up to the strand line. I'll now be perched up here until well into the ebb, but I will move back down at least once. As usual, my larger and whole lugworm are in the white bucket. The blue bucket contains the bits and smaller lugworm. If I'm mixing baits on the same rig, I tend to go for lugworm on the lower hooks and ragworm on the top. There's no real logic behind this, and I do change them around. I do have baiting needles, but most of the time I tend not to bother using them. Sometimes, when I've threaded them on, I will pinch off the tails of a lugworm, but if there's bigger fish about, I tend not to bother doing that. If I'm fishing for soles and smaller flatfish, I do prefer to have nothing hanging off the hook. Since I tend to strike at most bites, I do want the fish taking the hook and not just the end of the worm. Conditions seem good, water not too choppy and fairly clear, but I don't really like the look of those clouds behind me. I like to move my baits quite a bit to try and get some interest, and to check to see that spider crabs aren't sitting on the rig. Fortunately, there's no sign of them so far. Well, that looks like a fairly decent bite to me. It's place number 2, and another fairly decent sized fish.
Hi, how are you? Everything good?
Yeah. Right.
Go inside.
Yeah. This one seems fairly deeply hooked, so disgorger or forceps are needed. And here comes the first of the rain.
Bye-bye.
It swam off okay, and it had been caught on the ragworm, and that now needs to be replaced.
be rain. Look there, we're coming here. No, we're coming here.
I've got my jacket. I've got a...
Don't put my jacket.
No.
No, it's the same.
Both fish have been caught at distance, which is normal, so clipping down is essential. I'll fish it all the way down as well. It's normally better when it's going down. It's about half an hour before the top of the tide, and it didn't take very long for the next bite. This feels like another decent fish. Although my observer seems to think it's the same fish, this one's well over a pound. This one also needed a forceps. As soon as I recast, I was back in again.
Yeah, it's on. Look. It's small.
Not big fish.
The same before too.
Same size.
Same like this. Another fish. Go there. Go here.
Slightly smaller, but still sizable. And this one's on the top snood. There's a spell of rain and no more bites until the tide started to ebb. Then I get a good knock, which is worth striking into. And it feels like a good weight. Well, that's what I call a nice triple shot. The two plaice have taken ragworm, whereas the bass has taken lugworm on the bottom snood. Although ragworm seems to be the favoured bait, I am still trying lugworm, and I'm alternating it on different snoods. Everything's been caught at a distance. I have tried one or two casts closer in, but that's not resulted in any bites. I'm just about to cast out, but then I notice a bite on the other rod. It didn't develop, so I've probably missed that chance. But then it goes again, so dragging the bait probably helped. And this is now turning into a rather good day. Another little bite, which then develops having dragged it. This time, the fish feels a bit different. A little smooth hound to add to the variety. Weather brightens up a bit, but the bite slowed down as the tide is ebbing, and this was the last bit of action for the day. Still, another nice place to finish the day on. I'm really glad to have opened my plaice account for the year. Now it's time for the soles to roll on.